This is the CTE TEACH Podcast, and we are your hosts. I am Christopher McClung, and with me as always,
Deidra Puentes.
And today, this is the start of a brand new month of the year 2020. We have a special episode to kick off for this brand new decade. To start, this is our very first on-location episode, which is being filmed today at Colton High School and is being filmed with the assistance of the CHS AV Club. And here with us is we are privileged to have our very first panel of the decade of veteran educators. And the very first CTE student with us today. And we'll go ahead and please introduce yourselves. Kind of tell everybody who you are, what you do to the audience. We'll start with you.
Okay.
So we'll go around.
I'm Mateo Cisneros, and I am a student.
Jorge Alvarez, assistant principal.
Bruce Ingram, RLP teacher.
Elizabeth Fregoso, career readiness specialist.
Fantastic.
Deidra Puentes. I'm the CTE TEACH grant coordinator and peer coach leader.
Cool.
Okay, so first I would like to say thank you for everyone listening, and that this podcast is created in partnership with the California Department of Education. And the purpose of this podcast is to bring forth relevant conversations about CTE and teaching, education, and mentoring. So since we're off, this is right back after winter break. What was your favorite thing to do as a child? Anybody? First.
I think I'll go first. So, my favorite thing to do as a child was to play hide and seek with my siblings.
Okay.
I always like that.
Myself, I always like to have a big family, and I just enjoyed it when we all got together.
Okay, family get-togethers?
Riding my bicycle.
Okay.
I had this really, really big trampoline in my backyard, and I remember for hours, me and my brother would go back there and just jump and tire ourselves out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to throw, I like throwing in my wrenches. I just watched Toy Story 4 with my kids. We all cried. Was there a favorite toy that you guys all had as a kid? We'll start with you, Mateo.
Oh, boy. You know what? I used to collect the little Hot Wheels. I
Okay.
used to like putting them on a shelf in my room and looking at them.
Nice.
I didn't really have any action figures, but my favorite toy, soccer ball. Yeah, and Hot Wheels as well.
Not to sound kind of weird, I remember my grandparents, we had this long basement.
Yeah.
And we had this big box, and we just ride down the stairs.
Oh, yeah, the
That's
steps.
the best.
Love
Yeah.
to do that.
Box.
Very cool.
I guess I would have to say a light bright. I
Okay.
used to sit there and
I
poke all
forgot
these little
those.
lights through, and then I used to leave it on as a night light until, of course, the light bulb burned out. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my favorite toy.
My daughter turned 6 and she just got one. Like somebody gave her one, but
Yeah.
it's like that thin. Like it's super thin, but it still works. So very cool. Well, that's awesome. Good. Well, yeah, we all love toys. So like as we said, so the topic of this month is we're kind of busting some of the myths of CTE, and all of us who've been in CTE, we've come across like the people that kind of assume about some things that regarding CTE. You guys also might know it as ROP, which stands for Regional Occupational Program. CTE is Career Technical Education. And so what we want to do is just kind of throw out a few myths on the table and just tell us what are your guys' experience with them. You are a CTE student. You obviously have some programs here at this campus that are all CTE related, and both of you are educators in CTE. So the first myth we want to start today is CTE is primarily for poor performing students or students who won't go to college. What do you guys think of that?
I think CTE courses can give the students like a real world experience into professions that can lead into a career. So whether they choose to just stay and go into the job market or into a technical program, they can also use the same skills and experiences and they can transfer those skills into a 4-year university and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. And all of the courses that I've taken here at Colton High School through ROP have been articulated. So I've gotten college credit for all of those classes. So, I don't understand how people think that CT is for students that are not going to college if we're getting college credit from taking the classes.
Great
Good point.
Mateo.
Yeah, actually, I had an experience along that lines where I had a parent said, "No, my daughter can't be in your class. She's going to college. She can't be in your class. I have to get her out of there. And I said, so why are you taking her out of college?
Yeah.
And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, my class, your daughter can get college credit. There's a college that recognizes what we teach, that it's on that level. And the class you're going to put her in probably doesn't give her college
Right.
credit,
Right.
which made them, we had a conversation and she left her daughter there.
Yeah. That's true. Awesome.
In addition, I believe that one of the things is that when I went to college, I had to pay my way through and I had to have a job. And so sometimes if the kids take a class, they start a career in high school, they can get a better paying job while they put themselves through college, if that's the case for a lot of people. So that's another valid point. Start your career while you're in high school, go to college to expand on that career, but you don't have to be making minimum wage.
Right.
So as I think of it on a larger scale, we're getting ready to do the strong workforce grants,
Okay.
the review of
Yeah.
those. And if you think about it in that perspective, they're passing this money down, or the districts are applying for the money so that they can work with the community colleges to better align it, to make a clearer path for students. Because a lot of times what happens is you get out of high school and then you're like, oh, what do I do? Where do I go? Now, so with this money, it's intended to build that pathway so it's easier for students to find their way to the next part of their education.
Next question.
Okay, so the next question, and I think Ernesto might be able to speak to this, is that CTE Teach program or CTE programs are outdated and dirty.
Not at Colton High School.
I was saying, have you seen dirty, outdated classes?
Not our ROP ones.
Yeah.
We have a brand new steam shop that is state of the art and looks like it's like we're not even in the 21st century in there. It's so far advanced. The technology that we have in our classrooms, brand new computers and screens everywhere and all kinds of stuff. And then our medical pathway in classes too, they have lots of, I don't want to say props, figurines and hands-on figures to learn with. So
Like
no.
the CPR dummies and all that
Yes,
kind
the
of stuff.
CPR dummies, all of those things.
Right.
I think if anything, ROP classes here at Colton High School and in our CRIOP region, I think I'm gonna go ahead and say that some of them look even more technologically advanced than the regular classrooms. They have more resources, and I think because they're specialized and their programs are hands-on, they have even more props, like Ernest was saying, and they have more computers and more technology than the regular classroom.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Not Mr. Wers, Mr. Barta, sorry. Mr. Barta doesn't he have like a virtual reality welding something or other?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Anybody else want to add anything to that one?
I would say that because our teachers come from the industry, they're always staying up to date with the industry. So they're always bringing in the new industry technology that's coming about. They're staying up to date with what's going on. I know for our computer labs, they're always with the newest software and teaching the newest updated technology. So I know that because I work with the students that are in there, sometimes they know more than me. So I love that.
Also, one of the other things I think is really great about the ROP classes that I tell some of the parents, ROP, where students are actually learning how to go out, get a job, all the things they need to sell themselves and get a job. And they can go to college, get a PhD. They're still not going to tell them or teach them how to sell themselves, how to go out and get a job and market themselves. And that's a skill they get in ROP they can use the rest of their life.
Very true. So the next myth I'll bring up, we've heard this before, is CTE teachers aren't real teachers. And what do you, especially you, Bruce, what do you think about that?
Well, one of the things I know, I had a conversation with an English teacher because they were teaching, here's how you do a resume. And I think, the English, the grammar and all that stuff is very important. But that teacher has been teaching for 20, 25 years.
Right.
Not sure the last time they either did an interview or were in one.
Right.
So they can't really relate to what's going on there. Being in industry, I've actually interviewed hundreds of people. The company I went with sent me to a class for 40 hours on how to go about interviewing and get a good candidate. So I think I can relate to my student things that will actually help them get a job. You need both sides. You do need the English part. You do need to have a quality, well-written resume, but it needs to be done in a way that's going to actually get you a job.
Yeah, true. Anybody else?
With the CTE teachers, to get the preliminary credential, they have to have industry experience, so they have to have experience in what they're going to teach. That doesn't always mean that they have the experience in the classroom. However, they are required to do an early orientation within the first 30 days. They also have to start their credentialing program pretty quickly after that, because they only have 2 years, I believe, 2 or 3 years to clear that credential. And in those classes, that's where they learn the history of CTE and all the different components to teaching a class, like classroom management, different learning strategies, and things like that. So they do go through training. It's just different than a general ed teacher's training. So they're just a different teacher.
Yeah.
They're still a teacher.
Yeah. And they still do have to have like classroom management. They still have IEPs and 504s to work through, and all that.
Yeah, they do everything that the general education teacher does.
Mm-hmm.
They just teach a different topic, have different experience.
Exactly. Cool. Anybody else?
Well, I just want to go on the record and say that Bruce is as real as they come. He's a real teacher. He's a real person. And I think he's alive. Last time I checked his pulse, he was alive. He's a real teacher. I think if the teachers work for the ROP programs, they have a different credentialing system, like you said, and different process that they go through to become a teacher. But if they're a CTE teacher employed by a school district, just like any other teacher in the state, they have to be credentialed before they can even step into a classroom. And that's something that the state monitors. So as far as being credentialed, they're all credentialed or working towards being credentialed. So that is a complete myth.
Yeah, it is a myth, that's right. Which is a great segue to another myth, which is CTE programs mostly lead to a career with a low-paying job.
Did I mention we have a STEAM shop? And I think somebody else mentioned all of the computer labs that we have. I mean, that is what our society is going towards is STEAM and science and technology, and then we lead into our computer labs.
So I have an example. My son, he's been an Avid since like 5th grade or something. I don't know. But his Avid teacher in his 10th grade year told him, "What are you going to do? Be a construction worker?" And when he came home and told me that, as a CTE teacher, I'm like, she said, "What?" I said, "Does she not understand that you could probably make as much money, or if not more money than her, if you had your training and you went into a union and did construction work? It's not the same as it used to be.
Right.
It's not like you don't have the benefits, you don't have all these things if you are doing a blue-collar job."
Right.
I mean, plumbers make tons and tons of money. So I was just saddened that I had put him in Avid because I do want him to go to college and I want him to have the study skills necessary, but I was sad that she was discouraging him from being a construction worker, like it's something less or lower than. So that kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a low-paying job. Even if it's manual labor, it's not necessarily a low-paying job.
Yeah. And we have a great construction program at Yucaipa High School that, they do fantastic stuff.
And they have the adult program out at the Yucaipa Adult School too for construction as well.
And speaking by experience, I can tell you this weekend I was with a plumber. And I was missing a valve in my barbecue area. And I asked him, "Hey, if you give me a good price, we can just take care of it right now." And he said $75, put on the valve in maybe 3 minutes, and he was done. And I wish I would make $75
And you're like,
in 3 minutes.
I spent $75.
And that's something that I'll probably, never reach as an educator. But regardless of, them going into a technical job or going to a 4-year university, the myth that they're not going to make as much money as anybody else. Nowadays, we're learning that in the 21st century, you have to bring something extra to the table in order for people to become marketable. So they're saying that average is over. There's a video out there, really, really great video out there on that. And if you graduate high school and all you did was your general ed, math, science, all the core classes, and you don't have any extra skills, any extra experiences, you're going to get into college not really knowing your field that you decided to choose. And for that reason, you might decide to switch them and then therefore lose money and time. Whereas students, for example, enrolled in a medical pathway, if they're doing medical terminology and classes like that front desk, they're going to go into a nursing program or PhD program, medical program, and have the background and skills that they need to be successful in that field. So whether they stay with a technical degree or move on to a 4-year and beyond, they'll be more prepared than the people that chose not to take a career technical class in high school.
That's right, and the medical pathway is one of the biggest pathways at Colton High School, and that prepares students directly to either continue on to college, to continue pursuing that medical pathway, or go right into a job in the medical field.
Medical assistant for an office.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically what we covered. But yeah, so half of our classes here, we do have shop classes. We have the auto shop, we have the welding shop, and we have the steam shop. But then the other half of the classes are technical classes. We also have the GIS, which is all learned about the software and mapping software. And then we also have courses, like he mentioned, the HEAL courses, information technology. And all of those courses are guiding them to start their career in high school and continue it in college. So all of those things, like I said, it's you got to start somewhere. So we're doing that cradle to career, starting them here and taking them beyond.
Yeah.
So something I want to mention is that, and it's also required that a CTE course have the labor market information to substantiate the course even being offered.
Exactly.
So if there's a, we couldn't necessarily just put a course in here for, I don't want to say anything like,
Underwater basket weaving.
yes, underwater basket weaving, because there's no demand for it. Nobody's going to pay for it. So it's like we have to have the advisory meetings that help industry back why we're offering them. And then we look at the labor market information to ensure that there are jobs out there for the students when they're done.
Right.
Like, we don't want to give them a path to nowhere.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
well, and I think even of like the community classroom stuff that we do, that students can go and learn about the medical pathway and then have an opportunity to go work in a hospital during the summer. And that's like really cool. So I used to teach, going on a tangent, I used to teach animation. And when I was in high school, I wanted to work for Disney, but I had no idea how to get there. And then now had I had the opportunity to take an animation class, I would have known exactly how to get there and whatnot. So yeah, it's cool. We have cool stuff. We have game design as well. That's everything. Stuff I used to get in trouble for doing in school. Now it's class. Yeah, that's very cool.
okay, so our next myth is CTE classes don't teach academic skills such as writing or math. Anybody want to take that one on? Go ahead.
Okay, I guess I will start. And from personal experience, I was an English language learner, so I took a CTE class. My first one was woodshop, and it was in middle school. And I didn't know much English, but that's the first class that I could actually complete assignments in because I could use my hands and he could demonstrate. Later, I learned that was to die. Here's the wood. This is what you do. He demonstrated, then I did. So it was the first class that I felt successful in and that I could complete a project and feel really, really good. I took what I learned from him and I applied it in other classes. So even though it wasn't an English class, I feel like I learned the most English in Mr. Dubois' class in, Colton, Bloomington Middle School. That's where I went.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
And I would say just walk into any ROP or CTE class, and then you'll see that they probably do a lot of work that involves reading and writing. I've walked into the auto shop class, and they're looking at different textbooks related to standards for certification and for repairing vehicles and things like that. If you go into a cooking class, culinary arts, you'll see them also reading the textbook and analyzing certain things about cooking temperatures and measuring those and things like that. And the same for every single other class. I've walked into the welding class, steam shop. They're all looking at geometry. They're looking at physics, most importantly. And to say that they don't do math, reading, and writing, it's not true. And then I would challenge anybody to go into any of those classes or ask any of the students that have taken those courses and ask them if they haven't done any reading and writing, because every single class has a textbook.
Yeah.
So I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
And something I was thinking about when you were talking about that is that when I first started teaching, we actually went to courses to teach CTE teachers how to implement and embed academics into their coursework.
Right.
And we're also aligned to the Common Core state standards as well. But I think I've lost my train of thought. Academic skills. Oh, the pathway model. Because like with all of the schools going toward the pathway model, like you have the healthcare pathway, you have the auto pathway, transportation. That gives an opportunity for the general ed teachers to collaborate with the CTE teachers. And if you think of it in that context, you can see how projects could be developed with an English teacher and the GIS teacher, or the English teacher, or the math teacher and the welding teacher. Because it's like they're going to teach how to do the math, but over here you're going to apply it. So you have this part and that part. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to overcome is the collaboration part. Because teachers, I'll admit it, I like to stay in my silo. This is so it was harder for me to get out and collaborate with other teachers when I was a teacher.
Well, like you said, the pathway model is a good program for people to come in together, collaborate, and create units. Because I can speak for a medical pathway because I oversee that particular pathway. And I can tell you that all the CTE teachers are working together with the core content teachers in creating full units. And like you said, they divide up the work. They do the math portion with the math teacher. They do the English writing and research for that unit with the English teachers. And then in the science classrooms, they're doing the labs and hands-on. And then they come in and combine it with the CTE teachers. And they do all the hands-on activities too in that classroom. So it's a good model for collaboration for CTE and regular.
And I know that I think that gives the students context. Like it connects the real world to what they're learning. Because I know they're like, why do I have to write this paper? Why do I have to read this? Well, because this is how you're going to apply it, and this is where you're going to use it. So by bringing those together, it allows the students to see how all the academics are really going to be useful and helpful to them when they go out into the real world.
And we also have a lot of UC, well, I'd say most of our classes are UC approved, and those require a decent amount of writing essays and researching, especially in the medical field.
We have another one here. It's CTE classes are only for boys.
Well, speaking of the medical pathway, the problem is we don't have enough boys. Most of them are girls, and but we are looking at equity issues across the board to make sure that our classes are well balanced and that there is an equal amount of boys and girls. But we do have that certain issue that in some classes we have all girls. So, and we're trying to get away from that. So,
I was thinking of an example. Sometimes, like, a girl might want to take the auto shop class, but their parents come in and say, no, she doesn't want to take that class. And then it kind of overrules what the student really wants to do.
We're so blessed that the previous auto shop teacher was a female.
I remember. So did that, did that increase the females that were enrolled in the class because it was a female teacher?
I don't have the numbers right now to show, but I would say yes, because if I'm a female and I see a role model in the classroom, conducting that type of work, then I think that would motivate me to follow on their footsteps and say I can do this profession as well.
That's cool. And our construction teacher is a female teacher. She does a great job.
You were going to say something?
I lost my train of thought, but I agree.
Whatever it was, I agree.
So CTE TEACH is a program, the grant that I oversee, is a program that is designed to aid and develop mentors to mentor new CTE teachers. So in this podcast, we always like to bring it back to mentoring or, somebody you looked up to. So can anybody discuss or share with us why they think a mentor or somebody to help you along the way is important?
I'll start. I actually have, in the past 4 years that I've been a student here at Colton High School, I think that I have 3 because I still do have them. And I think they're the 3 people sitting closest to me right here.
All the females?
Just right.
Come on.
Somebody bring us the tissues, please.
Each of them has taught me a little bit of something different from their own personal experience and from their job profession. 3 very different job professions here. And so that's been really helpful to me in shaping how I present myself to anybody, online and offline too, and has given me guidance into where I want to go next and what I want to do next. So I have gotten a lot out of having mentors, and I've been lucky enough to have 3 of them.
And I would say that just as you might think that we have taught you something, being a mentor or being for kids, being a role model also helps you, because I think I've learned a lot from you, your outreach, the way you approach people, your professionalism, your networking. I think I've learned a lot from you to get out of my shell and out of my office and step out and do things, outside of just the confinement of my office. So I appreciate you and thank you for the opportunity you give me to work with you. So, and then looking back as a student, I had my own mentors too that were ready to promote me, to advocate for me, to push me forward, and to yell at me sometimes when I wasn't doing the things that I was supposed to be doing as a student. I remember Mr. Ronay. He wasn't really my teacher, but I would always go to his classroom, and he had like this stern look in his face, and he would yell at people and threaten people with sitting on them. He was a large African-American man, maybe 300 pounds, and he would threaten people with sitting on them if they didn't listen to him. So that stuck with me, but he was a great mentor. He was a social sciences teacher, and I ended up becoming one. So I appreciate everything he did for me, but I think giving back to people, paying it forward, gives you as much as anything that you could ever give anybody. You get a lot more in return, I think, so it's well worth it.
There have been several people that have been helpful. I went through the CTE TEACH program, but I think it's kind of weird. I have to go back to one of the people that had the most impact. It was before I ever became a teacher.
Okay.
My ex-wife was a teacher. She worked for CRY-ROB.
Okay.
But I remember she used to always talk about how if there's no classroom management, no learning takes place. Mm-hmm. And I know that I heard that if you had asked me if I'd ever be a teacher, I'm like, no way. No way. Yeah. And I became a teacher, and that stuck with me. I know one time I hadn't been teaching but 2 or 3 months, and Carol and Stephanie came, and they were like, wow, I've seen teachers that have been teaching for 10 years, and they don't have this control. But it was because of what I would hear her talk about other teachers that didn't have control. So I think that's made my life, for the most part, a lot easier, hearing that and understanding that before I ever started teaching.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, I've been blessed with many role models. Most in the education field. Growing up, my teachers were the people that I looked up to, and so that's what I decided that I was going to go and become. But now I think that what I loved about them was that they believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So that's one thing that I try to do with my students. I want to believe in them. I want to help them. I want to do whatever it is that I can do from my part to help them be successful. So giving back is a big thing for me because I received growing up in this district. Yeah.
Very cool. So fantastic. So one last question we have before we conclude is, what words of wisdom would you give to a student or an industry professional who's considering a career in career technical education? Or just in education in general, just anybody who's considering doing what you are doing or going the route you might go, what would you tell them?
We have a new teacher at Colton High School this year for ROP. She teaches sports medicine and therapy. Okay. And I knew her a year before she became the teacher. She's also our athletic trainer for our school, so I worked with her a lot beforehand. And when we were talking about her thinking about becoming a teacher, she was really freaked out and really nervous about it. And this was at the beginning of this year, actually. Yes, so I had taken, I had gone through 3 ROP classes already. And so we talked a lot about, how ROP teachers conduct themselves and how general ed teachers conduct themselves. And I said that the ROP teachers are cool. They know what's in their industry. And this new teacher, she's young, and that's what I really like, that she's still in the industry.
Right.
She is.
And that's not to say that our teachers that are full-time teachers now aren't in industry. They are still 100% connected to it because our programs show it. They're so good. But she's in the industry, and she loves what she does. And I don't think you become a teacher out of being forced to do it. You have to have that passion for it and that love for the students. And so I think that if you have that, or if you have that, continue with it. Keep pushing through it, and remembering your love and passion for the students and your industry, because that's what brought you into it.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true. Students are always surprising you, and the rewards go on for a long time. Yeah. So in fact, my wife and I got new phones this weekend, and I walked in. There was a student I've not seen in like 5 years, Mr. McClung, and I'm like, dude, I need a new phone. And so help us out. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. It's always just fun to do this. So, and thank you, audience, for listening and watching the CTE Teach podcast. Hope you've enjoyed your time with us as much as we have with you. Next month, we will be discussing CTE innovations. And if you'd like to submit a topic or a question for our panelists to discuss next month, please feel free to email us at cteteach@cryorop.org. It's on the bottom of your screens now. And you can join in today's conversation by leaving a comment. And we also invite you to follow us on Twitter. We're at CTE_Teach. You can like and subscribe our YouTube video at CTE Teach, and on multiple podcast stations at CTE Teach. And as I said, and as I like to say, we like to close every episode with an inspiring quote. And so this one is from a 20th century poet. Her name is Edith Lovejoy Pierce, and she wrote, "We will open the book. Its pages are blank. We are going to put words on them ourselves." And the book is called Opportunity, and its first chapter began New Year's Day. Thanks for being a part of it. Bye.
Bye.